Hi, my name is Kennedy, and these are all of the books that I read in 2024. I'm going to put all of my Goodreads stats for the year up here and kind of go through them before we start. So, as you can see, I set a goal for 20 books because I'm just getting back into reading and I didn't want to set too high of a goal for myself that I didn't feel like I could accomplish. And I did accomplish this goal reading 26 books, which for me is good, and I'm very proud of that. It also goes into the average amount of pages that I've read, the highest rated of my series, the most shelved, least shelved, things like that, which I found were really interesting. So I'm glad Goodreads put that all together. I know I haven't posted in a while, but my big goal for 2025 is to post more on this channel. And I got a little microphone, getting professional over here. But yeah, I really just want to make more videos and put them up because I enjoy it and I enjoy talking about reading. I'm not going to go into depth about any of these books. However, I'm going to save my final 5 books that are my top 5 of the year, and I will go into those a little more. So, with all that being said, let's get started and let me know your favorite reads of 2024. This year, I read pretty much all of ACOTAR except for the first book because I had already read the first book. But everything else in the ACOTAR series I read this year and I absolutely loved it. I will say this is a little bit of an unpopular opinion, I think, but my favorite of the entire series is Of Court of Wings and Ruin. I completely ate this book up, loved every second of it, and yeah, it is my favorite of the series. However, I did enjoy all of them. I just basically said I need to catch up with this series, and I'm really glad I did it. I read them all in order to, and I also vlogged it on my channel. So go check that out if you want to see an ACOTAR reading vlog. Going into more series, pretty much everything I read is a series, but I read Jade War, the second book in the Greenbone Saga series. I absolutely loved Jade City. This was a huge book, and I'm not gonna lie, it kind of put me in a reading slump. It took me almost 2 months to finish this book. It is my least favorite in the trilogy, but I did still enjoy it. It had some really great parts in it, and I just love the series as a whole. So, still glad that I got to this, but definitely my least favorite in the series. During October, I wanted a sort of spooky read, so I read The Knife of Never Letting Go. This is the first book in, I believe, a trilogy, and it is about this town of all men where everyone can hear each other's thoughts and see each other's thoughts. Our main character is a young boy who is trying to escape this town and learns some very dark secrets about this town, and the other people of the town do not like that very much. So it is a pretty brutal book. There was a major part of this book that I really didn't like, kind of turned me off to it. The writing style is also very different, but I didn't really mind it. This book to me was just okay. I didn't love it, I didn't hate it, and I don't think I'm going to be continuing. I also read The Three Body Problem this year, which is really cool because it also had a series on Netflix come out. I did enjoy this book. I thought it was really unique and it made you think about a lot of things. I found out this year that I'm not really into deep sci-fis. I believe like ones that are really centered around math and physics and take up a lot of the book. So I did not absolutely love this, but I loved a lot of aspects in this book. I have the second one. I'm probably going to read the second one. I hear it's pretty good. This did end on a cliffhanger. So yeah, I think I'm going to continue and see how I feel about it from there. But either way, this is like a classic sci-fi. Literally, Obama read it. So I'm glad that I got to it this year. I read The Blood Trials, which is something I was really, really excited for. I love brutal books about war, and this one was that, also mixed with like a fantasy element. So definitely thought I would like it. However, this book was just not for me. I was about 200 pages in and just not enjoying my time. For me, the pacing was off, and there was a lot of plot lines all tangled together. And I wasn't really drawn to any of the characters, so that just made it not that enjoyable of a read for me, which is really sad. But this book could be for other people, and it is a duology. Yeah, unfortunately, just not for me. My next book is the last book that I've read of the year, and it is a very popular one. That is Project Hail Mary. I have been wanting to read this book for a very long time. And again, I am sad to say that this book was just not for me. There was a lot of math and science in this book, and I just did not have a fun time reading it. I do, however, with this book, get why so many people love it. And when I look back at the whole story, I feel like it is a beautiful story that was told. But unfortunately, I did not have a fun time reading it. I did like it better. If you've read this book, you will know when another character kind of gets introduced and it goes a little bit of a different way. I thought that part was more enjoyable, and I did like one character a lot. But again, it was just hard to read for me. I was not very excited to ever pick it up. So, yeah, that was unfortunate, but I'm glad that I at least tried it. Now we are going into This Dark Descent. I feel like the books that I read this year were either like 5 out of 5, so my favorite books I've ever read, or I was unimpressed with them. And a lot of these also fall into that category, including this one. So, This Dark Descent is about a fantasy type of world, and they have enchanted horses, and there's this big deadly race every 10 or so years, and people ride the enchanted horses, and they get a bunch of popularity and other things if they win the race, and people do die in this race, which I found very interesting. I think the concept in the world is pretty cool. We have two POV characters. It is a young adult, which I'm just not very into in general. Um, I just really liked the cover, and the thought of a bloody fantasy horse race intrigued me. Again, the plot and the characters just did not really draw me in, but it was a pretty quick and fast read. I will not be continuing this series. Pretty much the exact same thing with this book, Lore. Lore is about all of the Greek gods that got punished by Zeus, and every 7 years they come back to Earth as humans. And if a human kills them, it's basically a big battle royale. If a human kills them, then they get those Greek gods' powers. So it's basically bringing the Greek gods back down to Earth and showing them what it's like to be a normal human and having their life at risk and in jeopardy of losing their life and their power. I enjoyed reading this more than some of the others that I have mentioned, but again, it's nothing like in depth, nothing that really drew me in and made me want to continue reading the series, but it was pretty decent. Again, during spooky season, I picked up A House of Salt and Sorrows. It is about these big group of sisters. I believe it is 12, but somewhere around 12 sisters. And the oldest one, every few years or every couple years, has been dying in crazy or mysterious ways, and people in this town believe that the sisters are cursed, including the sisters themselves. This book actually surprised me in a good way. I thought this was just going to be some normal YA with a little spooky elements, but I ended up really loving this book. There were mystery and ghosts and death and other unique sources of magic. Obviously, don't want to go into any spoilers, but I actually think the author did a great job of making you feel what is in this book and making you picture these scenes with some of these ghosts. It really was kind of like watching a scary movie to me, and not many books do that, even scary books. So I really thought this was unique and enjoyed my time reading this a lot. Which brings us to the second in the series, House of Roots and Ruin. I literally bought this the very next day after finishing the first book because I wanted to know what happened. They both have very pretty covers, but I did not know that these two books were not really a series. Instead, this is a sequel with a completely different character POV and like a 10-year time gap. It does make sense because this one did have like a solid ending, but I would have liked to see more how this story progressed. This book was okay. It still had the good elements of the mystery and spooky sides, but I was not as attached to this character, and it didn't have as fun of a story for me as the first one. But if you're someone who's into like standalone thrillers and fun, mysterious stories, then I definitely do recommend both of these because there are some twists and turns in this book and they are really fun. We'll just end off my spooky season books with The Raven Boys. This was highly recommended to me by my cousin. This is one of her favorite series ever. It is also like a fun ghost psychic type of story. It is about this girl who her mom can see ghosts. At the beginning of the year, they basically go to this church and they can see the ghosts of all the people who are going to die within that year. And for the first time, our main character sees a ghost, and it is a boy from this all boys school in her area. And she basically stumbles into meeting him, and it's all the mystery of the town, the mystery of his death, and everything that goes with it. This is a series as well, and I am definitely going to pick up the next one. I read this book in like 2 days and really enjoyed it. Next, I finished another series, which I'm happy about, and that is the Cruel Prince series. I also read The Cruel Prince 2 years ago. So I just decided to finish it up. Again, these books are small, fast reads, and I get that The Cruel Prince is not some deep, amazing fantasy or anything like that, but I just loved it. I kind of thought the first book was my favorite, but both of these were pretty good. I just think Holly Black makes a really immersive world and fun characters, and it also has a little bit of dark side to it too, a little bit of the fantasy romance. So yeah, these are just fun, cute books. Next book is Iron Gold. Red Rising is easily my favorite series ever. So I'm really glad I got to Iron Gold. This is kind of a sequel of the first trilogy and one of the first or the first book that has multi POVs. This book was kind of a stepping stone between the last book of the first trilogy and the starting of this next trilogy. So it is definitely not my favorite in the series, but I still enjoyed it because anything Red Rising involved, I will love. I love the characters, love everything about the world, and just no complaints here. The next book is Piranesi. This is actually the shortest book I've read. I don't think I've really ever read a book that is like under 300 pages. I feel like I'm always reading 500 to 600 page books. So this was a nice little read. I heard everybody talking about it, had no clue what it was about, and it was just a beautiful journey that I really can't even explain. The mystery, but also simplicity of this book just made it really unique. And this is something that I kind of think about all the time and hold with me. So if you were thinking about reading Piranesi, you should really read it. Next book I read is The Storm Beneath the World, which is actually my least shelved book that I have on Goodreads. So, definitely not a lot of people talking about this book. Obviously, because I'm talking about this book right now, it is not in my top 5, but it was very close to making that cut. So, the story is based in this world where instead of people, it is bugs, and it follows bugs that look like that. And basically, the story is based on these bugs and finding their talents, which they are called in the books, which is literally just something that you find that you are really, really good at. However, in the books, it takes it to a little extreme that once they find their talent, every time they do their talent, they get this really good feeling and they just need to continuously do that talent to an excessive amount and sometimes it kills them. So it's very interesting and not every bug finds their talent. Um there is also the government that is afraid of these talents. So if they do find your talent and you are not useful to them, then you will get killed. So it is a very scary thing to find your talent, and people try to hide that if they do. Follow multi POVs in this book, seeing how the rich live, the middle class live, and the poor live, which is really cool. And they all kind of get brought together in this type of assassination school where they learn to use their talents. For a book being about bugs and the cool, brutal action and death scenes that are in this book, there is also a lot of deep messages and themes about humanity and friendship and power, everything like that. It is actually a very thought-provoking book. That concept is really cool while being used as bugs as our main characters. But yeah, this book is brutal. There are deaths, there is war, and a lot of tribulations. This seems any bit interesting to you, I definitely recommend it. And I know it will be a series. I'm not sure when the next book is coming out though. Next, I have The Rage of Dragons. This is another one that I just really thought I would love because, again, I love war stories mixed with fantasy. Again, this just didn't do it for me that much. It was a very fast, easy read, and I did not dislike it or really see many problems with it. I just didn't connect with it that much. I guess I was looking for something a little deeper than it was. I did enjoy some of the characters, and I did think the world was really well built and intriguing. It left off with a lot of mysteries and a pretty big plot point. So I do have the second one, and I am going to read it, and I'll see how I feel about it then. But yeah, I just didn't love Rage of Dragons as much as everyone else seems to. And lastly, before we get into my top 5 of the year, and this book is honestly like an honorable mention, it could squeeze into there because I love the series so much, and it is another one that is not talked about enough, and that is Griever's Blood, which is book number 2 in the Combat Codes series. This is about a world, it's more like a sci-fi, fantasy, futuristic world where instead of wars and everything, different countries take their best fighters and they go against each other 1v1, and whoever wins gets the land or whatever they were fighting over. It solves all the disputes. So obviously, fighting is a really big part in this world. Our main character, Sego, is a great fighter. He was found in this underground slum where he was being really mistreated, and basically goes into this high class fighting school now where he has to earn his place with all the kids who have been training their whole lives. The author of this book is also a black belt in jujitsu, so it's really cool. He knows a lot of moves and explains the fights in such a good way that you can really picture it happening. The fights are really intense in this book and feel real, and it's really cool. This book is seriously like a Red Rising, Will of the Many type of book where you have that kind of underdog character story with your main character. They're in this academy where they have to fight and make their way up. There's also a lot of plot twists and mystery with this world. The second book, this one went a lot more into world building, which I loved. We got another POV in this book too. And yeah, this I just love everything about this book. This is my type of book that I love. So if you like Red Rising, Will of the Many, things like that, I highly recommend you check out Combat Codes. That brings us to my top 5 books of 2024. And coming in at number 5 is The Children of Time. The Children of Time is a sci fi about the Earth being unlivable and the rest of humanity going on this spaceship. Well, there's multiple spaceships, but we focus on one that's carrying most of humanity, and they have to travel light years and find a livable planet. The people go into these high tech tubes that basically put them in a sleep state where they don't age or anything, and they can wake up 100 years later and it will still be like yesterday to them. So, as we're following humanity trying to find a livable planet, there's also another perspective of this planet that years and years ago, before these current humans' time, even, a scientist created this terraformed world, and she made this virus which was supposed to go into monkeys. And the virus was supposed to make the monkeys basically act like humans and kind of recreate how humans came to be as they are in our current day. It goes into things like natural selection and breeding. It goes into things like sexism and religion and science. However, instead of monkeys, it goes into spiders. So we are seeing this spider species be developed over hundreds of years, as well as following these humans drifting through space and trying to finally find a new home. I just loved everything about this story. I loved how unique it was. I loved seeing the perspective of humanity being developed through a species like spiders and how they tackled problems like war and poverty, things that humans have had to and are still struggling with now. And I also loved the humanity side and just seeing what humans would do with tasked with these very hard situations. There's people at the top that have to make really hard decisions, and it affects all of humanity. So I absolutely love this book. I don't think it is for everyone, but it was definitely for me. It is also a series, shocker, and I am going to get the next one. The ending to this was also insane and beautiful. So, yeah, Children of Time. At number 4, we have Jade Legacy, which is the final book in the Greenbone Saga trilogy. As I stated previously, Jade War was kind of hard for me to get through, although the ending picked up a lot. But I was kind of wary to read Jade Legacy, especially because of how long it is. But I absolutely loved everything about this book. I think it wrapped it up very nicely. And this book will always be special to me just because we followed these characters and this family and this world throughout three whole books. A lot has happened, a lot of emotional, happy, and sad things. And I just feel really connected to these characters. So it ending was very bittersweet. There's a lot that happened in this book as well. But I think it brought everything together very nicely, and I really think of, like, Hilo as a real person. He is one of my favorite characters ever. I found the world to be very immersive, and I do just think about it all the time. It's always going to have a soft spot for me, and I just love the story and these characters so much. So, yeah, I'm so glad I got to read this series in 2024. And again, Kahilo is Bay. Then, number three, we have another series mentioned already, and that is Red Rising series. This is Dark Age. So, I have yet to read Lightbringer. I'm planning to read Lightbringer and Red God back to back when Red God comes out, which is the final one in the series. That is going to be really emotional for me. But Dark Age was amazing, and it captured everything that I like about the series. We went more into depth of newer characters, different POVs, and there's just nothing to dislike about this book. I love Red Rising and I loved this book, and I'm excited and very sad to finish it. Coming in at number two is kind of like a dark horse. It's not a book that I ever expected to read. It's not a genre I ever expected to read. And I literally just bought it on a whim in December because I heard so many people talking about it. And that is Dungeon Crawler Carl. This is a type of literature where a character is basically in a video game type scenario, and I also love video games, so I loved this concept. There's also an anime called Solo Leveling out there, which is a lot like this book. So if you like this book, I would definitely check out Solo Leveling. It also has a book. But Dungeon Crawler Carl is about Earth not repaying a debt to these aliens. So the aliens basically destroyed Earth, and the very few people remaining were tasked with either surviving on this barren Earth now alone, or going into this dungeon and basically playing this aliens game. So it's kind of like the Hunger Games, but in space. Like, this whole other population of aliens watches this live TV show where they see humans suffer and die, and they root for it for them. And they can also sponsor things and get things sent to them, like in the Hunger Games. Our main character is a young man who gets pulled into this game with his ex girlfriend's cat, and the cat is very sassy and it is a very funny combo. So basically, they go into this dungeon and they have to fight creatures, level up, they get achievements, they get cool weapons, and it's basically like a choose your own adventure. Like, what they do in this game determines what they get, and it is also very risky because people do die. This is just so fast paced, fun, and creative. It's one of these books where in my head I'm thinking of it like a movie scene and trying to remember what movie, like, oh, I want to continue that TV show. And it was really just this book. Like, I was so excited whenever I had time to sit down and read this book. It's fun, it's brutal, and it is funny. One of the very few books that I will actually laugh out loud at, because the game creators are roasting our main character, Carl, calling him like a lonely cat boy or just really random, funny things. So, yeah, this was easily one of my favorite books of the year. and I am so glad that I picked it up. I already ordered the second book to the series. I'm probably going to read that as soon as possible. And I just want to read everything there is about this series because it is just that good. Again, probably not for everyone, but it was perfect for me. That leads us to my favorite book of the year, which happened to be the first book I read in the year, and that is The Will of the Many. This book, depending on how the series will go, will probably be in my top 5 of all time. As I said, with things like Red Rising and Griever's Blood, this is just everything I like in a book. It's that that underdog story, really immersive, cool world building, magic system. There are twists and turns. It is deeper under the surface than you think it is. And they all also have like a type of combat school where our character needs to get up in the ranks. So the will of the many's power system is literally will. It's people's will, and there is a hierarchy. The people on the bottom of the hierarchy basically give their will to the people at the top, and the people at the top do with that will what they will. This book is just awesome on so many levels. A lot of great characters, great villains, twists and turns, and again, this is just everything that I like in a book. It is perfect for me. So, if you have not given this book a try, I highly recommend it, and I cannot wait for the second one to come out. So that is everything that I read in 2024. As I said, it was a great year, and I think it showed me a lot of more what I really like to read and what I might not like to read as much. I'm really excited to see what books I get into in 2025. And next year, I am setting my goal for 30. So I'm going to go a little higher than this year. But again, I want to do something attainable to me. I'm also going to make it a goal to post more on here, especially what I read that month. And I'm going to finally make like a TBR jar and let fate decide what I read each month as well. So stay tuned for that. Leave a comment down below your favorite reads or if there are any books on this list that have intrigued you. And I will see you in the next video. Have a happy new year.